They are now.
Oh, that's what you, okay, thank you. It's not beeping, it said it couldn't hear us. I don't know why.
Yeah. Now, does that one need to be green? Because it's
No,
red.
That's, we're on mine.
Oh, okay.
Not YouTube.
All right. All right, so then that brings us to approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, then I believe we need to have, it's not on here at this time, but I believe we have to have approval of the minutes from our previous meeting.
They put it down under
They're,
actions.
they're down there.
Yeah.
First
Oh,
action
okay.
item.
Yeah.
Okay,
So now
sorry.
Yep.
All right, so then we get the public comment. Any public comment?
I'm not obviously a commissioner, so I'd like to.
You can, that's public comment. You can talk.
I know, well, I'd like to outline my role. I think when you guys are deliberating, I need to shut up. Correct?
You're a public,
Yeah.
you're a public right now.
I'm totally not a commissioner.
Correct.
I feel very comfortable with it, so.
Okay, did you have any comment other than that?
No, I just wanted to.
Okay. All right, having no other public comment, then we'll move on to the action items. So we have the approval of the June 23rd minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the June 23rd, 2025
Support.
meeting minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, so then we have the consideration of the vehicle purchase.
So last time we met, we talked about putting it into my budget. And you guys gave me some homework, and I got with Kathy on some of that homework, and during our brainstorm session, we discussed the fact that I'm down a vehicle right now, the transmission's out, it's gonna be a month, which means one of the guys is using his personal vehicle. And the fact that I have an additional body, we did not properly consider what getting a body in the office would require, which means vehicle. So, looking to see if I can purchase a vehicle now, rather than next year. That way I will be able to have a vehicle fully in service now, instead of my starting using his personal vehicle. So I did do a little bit of legwork, I didn't want to do too much, but that is what that Tacoma estimate is in there. So I just wanted to bring that forward for consideration, if that's anything you're interested in, or do we want to just roll it into the budget and we'll explore it at that?
Do you have any comment about that?
Well, this would be something that have to be forwarded to the full board, correct? I mean, we just pretty much make a recommendation, right?
Yeah. And isn't there, there's a government agency where you can go through getting vehicles, or don't they do Tacoma?
They didn't have Tacomas, so I
Okay.
started there because that's what I already had, and I know we didn't want to do the Rangers, but I can explore the My Deal. Lauren sent me that link too. I didn't get too far into that. That's
Okay.
new to me. I didn't know how that all works, but yeah, I know that's another option too.
Right. Well, I would make the motion that we move ahead with the vehicle this year, just for the fact that if you have another employee, you do, otherwise you're going to just be paying mileage and then we can consider any other things from there. So I would make that motion.
I'll support that.
All right. Is there any other comments? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. So we can move forward with that, and you could bring that before the board then. Did the finance have any issues with that at all? Thank you. So then that would bring us to vehicle use by a new employee and potential of taking vehicle home.
So Kathy, if you could come up and help me with that. Kathy and I brainstormed this. We each reached out to our counterparts in Grand Traverse County respectively. Grand Traverse County does not have a vehicle policy specific to their building department. They have an overall vehicle policy just as the county itself does. And then Kathy, if you could shed a little light on what
Yeah, the building inspections department in Grand Traverse County, they purchase vehicles just as our Leelanau County Building Safety Department does. And they give a vehicle to each inspector and they do take them home. And they take advantage of what they call commuting valuation, which is an IRS rule. And I provided a copy of that rule to Administrator Dyer and to Amber. And it seems a little odd because it is $1.50 a day taxable to the employee to take a car home and back regardless of distance. And it actually spurred conversation in Grand Traverse County that they hadn't looked at that rate to see if it even was updated, and it isn't. It's still $1.50 one way. And so I said, okay, Dean, my counterpart, this is the inequity of it. We have people who might drive 70 miles versus someone who drives 3. And he said, it doesn't matter, it's just evaluation, and it's the cost of doing business if you need inspectors, and they are licensed, and they want to be employed, we discount it as a cost of doing business. And that fuel is paid for by the department, and the repairs, the maintenance, the tires, regardless of distance. And they take advantage of that rule with the IRS code, community evaluation. It's a taxable event to the W-2 for that employee. There's no money that exchange hands, except the employee does have to pay the FICA on their side, and we match the FICA on our side. So there is that expense, additional expense.
FICA for $1.50, on $1.50?
One way, yeah. And he also said it is a fringe benefit, of course, that's what we're talking about, is a fringe to an inspector. It would be administratively a little fussy, so Grand Traverse County does it once a quarter, where they adjust the earnings record of the employee once a quarter.
Rather than make it, So what did you think of that?
I would like to see it go forward if possible. It seemed like that was less of a headache than the other path that I was trying to explore. And it's something that's already in place with Grand Traverse. It does work for them. They do have an inspector that lives out far out of the county. I believe they didn't give us this exact location, but they have somebody commuting from Leelanau County into Grand Traverse every day. So the way it works for us, and it already does with the inspector who's got permission to park his vehicle at a midway point, is you would do inspections on the way in. You would be expected to drive all the way into the office and then head back out. You would be able to start your inspections from home. There would be dialogue the day before, evaluation of your schedule. You have to come into the office at some point. Results are expected at the end of the day. But rather than starting in the middle of the county, you can branch out to whatever, so you're not going all the way north, all the way south. It allows for inspections to be done earlier in the morning, depending on where you're at, or later in the day, depending on where you're at. So it would allow us some flexibility there.
So he could start in Elmwood, coming from Mansalona.
Yeah, whatever, let's say he ends the day Tuesday and he sees that he's got 4 of them down there on Wednesday, and he's gonna hit those on the way in. Maybe he gets to the office by noon. Maybe he's got other ones on the southern end of the county or farther north. It would be the same for any of the inspectors.
And he would get the insurance, the $471 or whatever it is. Is he gonna get that, because he's not gonna take insurance?
It's okay, at the last meeting, yeah, that's okay, at the last meeting, Amber mentioned that they were gonna try and work out a deal, or not a deal, but looking to see if he forego the payment in lieu of, because he wasn't taking our insurance and such like that. So basically what happens if we're talking about the part-timer, as a part-time employee, the insurance is only based on him, not them, and then it's the percentage of being part-time to full-time. So being 3 days, it's probably like 60%. So that benefit would still be to him as a Teamsters employee. So the answer is yes, he will have that benefit.
He was doing mental math, essentially. It was like,
Right.
this is what I was gonna get paid from you all, and I was gonna put that back to you guys. But if we're not running that path anymore, we're gonna go this route to match Grand Traverse, then he would still receive that.
For me, that's same benefits.
Yeah, I don't,
It's like,
We discussed that.
yeah,
it's like, you.
But it gets confusing then when you start bringing that into it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
What do you think?
Let's do what the rules are, with the IRS and that.
Yeah.
Let's make a deal.
So for Grand Traverse, is this something, do they have a policy in place, or do they just let their whole building department deal with it? Everybody gets to take home a vehicle type of thing, or?
That's what the administrator, or the finance director of Grand Traverse told me, is that all the inspectors are given a vehicle. Now, it is a county policy for vehicle use, not a building safety department or a building inspection. They call it something different. So Amber is correct, though, we do have a vehicle use policy for Leelanau County.
Yeah.
And I did glance at it last week. It does not touch on this subject. And I didn't comb through in detail Grand Traverse either to see if it listed it. I don't recall seeing anything, so I'm not sure if they unofficially allow this. I did not see it in their policy. He sent me their policy, and it's very similar to what Leelanau County has. It's not specifically addressed, but I did clearly ask him if they have one for their department, and he said no.
So if we allowed this for $1.50, would every inspector could get the same thing? We couldn't really deny it to any other inspector. So they would all get to take it home for $1.50 each way. And would
There are
that,
some that would not want to,
well,
unless.
I know, I'm not saying, but I mean, and would that then end up going to every employee who uses a vehicle, whether it's senior services or whatever? I mean, would it all of a sudden we'd have a thing where everybody can start taking a vehicle home for $1.50?
Yes.
Because that's the only thing, if we open this up, I would be afraid that's what's going to happen.
Well,
We open it up for all of that, whether it happens or not.
if we looked at the whole fleet, the motor pool, I think we could exclude the motor pool vehicles with the exception of deputies, because the sheriff allows those to go home.
But would we have to apply that to them who take it home?
Yes.
No, I think that if you're asking for a little bit of advice, my advice would be is that you put in your policy that the vehicles within the motor pool are not subject to this, because her vehicles are her department.
Right.
Yes. You're correct. If you open that to the motor pool, I don't know how you would make a difference between the sheriff, the senior services and emergency management, and maintenance.
Right.
But hers are separate and they are purchased by her funds.
They're all county-owned vehicles. They're all county-owned vehicles. The distinction between motor pool, non-motor pool is not a distinction that matters. They're all county vehicles. You'd have to extend this to all county employees that take a vehicle home. You would have to adopt it as a policy.
Did you ask Dean, because their sheriff's office takes their vehicles
Yeah, I
home?
didn't answer specifically about the $1.50 with those, but I can.
I don't believe that they do.
Because the motor pool, if
But-
senior services owns its own vehicles, yeah. and-
But that also raises the question of whether they should own their own vehicles as well. Why does that make any sense?
Yeah. Because they have their own millage too.
Yeah, and I asked Grand Traverse County specifically, does building safety own their vehicles? He goes, absolutely, they have a fund balance that they need to buy their vehicles. And they've got $6 million in their fund balance in Grand Traverse County in this building safety department.
And we don't.
Yeah, over $1 million.
Right, and the idea of the having that fund was that when we have a downturn like we had in 2008, which will probably happen again, we didn't have to lay off, we won't have to lay off all of our inspectors and then put them on call basis as self-employed. That was a real mess. I don't know if any of you remember that, but I do. And sometimes they couldn't come on days because they were committed to somebody else. And then we couldn't get inspections on certain days. So that was where we said we need to have 1 year's set aside, fund balance, so that we can go a full year through a downturn and get inspections done and not have to lay off our inspectors. So I want to keep that fund balance up there. That's in my opinion. But because I do believe we'll have another downturn at some point here. Because I've been through several. And but this really creates a dilemma to me, because I don't really want to start opening it up to all the other things. And I don't want everybody to be able to take their car home for $1.50 and then drive back for $1.50. So that's where I mean, I guess that's where I like the idea of he could do it, but it would be compensated by whatever he gets for insurance, since he's not taking it. And I was thinking it was the, $400 or whatever it was, but I don't know, what do you,
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of my main concern was too, because it's like, that's gonna open it up to everybody, and how do we itemize that out? If we can, maybe I might be able to think about that a little different, but that's my only concern, with that is like, is that gonna open it to every department that has a vehicle? Or all of a sudden now we're, just opening that up to any and everybody, so that's my main, we can maybe get some answers on that to see is there a way to get around that type of thing, I don't know.
And I know, I'll talk to Grand Traverse about that $1.50 fringe on other vehicles outside of building inspections.
right, because maybe we were supposed to be applying it to all of them, who take it home.
Or is there a path to creating a policy for just my department for vehicle use? I
Right,
don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I definitely hear your concern, because that was my concern
Yeah.
going into this, is I knew this was going to impact more than just my department.
So that's what I would be in favor if we can do that, but I'm afraid that the administrator doesn't believe that we can separate as far as vehicle goes, the inspections from the rest of the counties, because we do own, even though the inspections buys them, the county really owns them, so I don't know.
They do buy them as an enterprise fund. They would not typically have these.
They wouldn't be in the motor pool, right?
And the motor pool exists so that we can charge the departments for mileage
Right,
to the general funds, or to the motor pool, so we can buy those vehicles.
right.
And her vehicles are paid for by her permits and the revenue that the
Right.
department generates.
And you don't charge them mileage or anything,
No,
correct?
she just her budget takes care of the gas, oil, everything.
I just think we need to find out if you do it, that we don't create it for everything else,
See
so
if
that
there's a
everyone
way
else
around
can
it or
take it
something.
home, yeah.
Would that be your recommendation then to the full board, or is there no recommendation?
I don't think I want to make a recommendation at this time, till we really know what we're talking about. And is that, I mean, I think we need to find out if we're going to create a problem or not before we bring it to the board. That's,
Because if we think about all
Yeah.
vehicles, we don't have the biggest fleet in the world. You
Right.
know, I mean, Grand Traverse County has hundreds of cars. So, if we go into the motor pool, and it's predominantly patrol cars, jail transport, emergency vehicles, the emergency dispatch, we have a vehicle that can do a mobile dispatch if we need it. Then we've got animal control truck, marine trucks. Marine
maintenance,
trucks stay here usually because they've got the bolts hitched to them. Maintenance trucks, now we did allow Jerry Pullman as the facilities
Right.
supervisor at that time to take his truck, and he was on call for the dam, so he could just leave from his home, go. And he did have the fringe attached to his W-2.
right. Well, and he did plowing as well. He had to plow on it. He would plow his way in sometimes and stuff. So, I mean, he actually used it for the county many times.
And what that fringe was calculated at the IRS limit of 70 cents, well, now it's 70 cents a mile. He'd keep a log, and every payroll turn the log in, and there'd be X number of miles for that period times the allowable 70 cents, and that would be a fringe tacked on to his W-2. With him paying his share of FICA, and we matched his FICA. So, of course, distance-wise, it's just a few miles. His home base was just a few miles away. And then the rest of the use was all county use. So it was just perceived to work and back 2 miles a day. But in this situation, this individual, if you took it by individual, which I don't think would be the way you want to go, this would calculate out between $7,000 and $8,000 as a fringe at the IRS allowed for that commute. And then we talked about the inequity of that, considering the fact that those W-2s would be inflated by that fringe. And those individuals would go to the Social Security office in their 70s, and his benefit would be calculated on a higher W-2 than somebody who lived 3 miles away and had the same opportunity. But, you know, and so there's an inequity there.
Right. But, what do you think, Amber?
I just need to know what my next steps are. I've got to pursue it until I get a solid no from
Okay.
you all. So are my next steps to work with Administrator Dyer to explore
Yeah.
the possibility?
I mean, I would like to do it, but I don't want to create a whole nother problem, you know, and that's what my fear is. And until we really know what we have and what we're going to do, what we're going to accomplish, I don't really want to try to move it forward. I mean, I'm not trying to stall it, but I just don't feel comfortable deciding something we don't really know.
Yeah, and I have no problem, you keep pursuing it and seeing, is there a possible way that we can break it up to just your department type of thing, where, you know, there's a caveat for that. I don't, you know, if we can't, then, then I'm gonna have a little cold feet about it, you know, because yeah, like Monica says, I just think that's opening up a lot, so.
With your experience, your history with the county, has this ever been discussed before at the board level?
Just taking cars out of the county has been the only issue that we've talked about before that I remember. And it was 5 miles is maximum, and then I think we made it 15 or something. You know, but that was as far as anybody could take it out of the county who took a car home.
I think we've also kicked around, but I don't think this solves this, you know, it's difficult when you narrow down to an individual employee and you're
Right.
talking about that person rather than the position. And this is where we get ourselves into quite a few wickets here, because we tend to make things about the person rather than the position. Because an option would be to take it to the county line, park it in Elmwood, and then the personal vehicle be used to go from Elmwood to their home in Cadillac, or wherever they live, you know.
Right.
And then that would be on them, but we would at least get them to the county line, and put it in a safe location, have a nice intergovernmental agreement with that locale, that they understand that their spare parking slips for the night would be Leelanau County Building Safety truck. But this individual, now we're getting back, we're not talking position, we're talking the individual. This wouldn't solve this
Exactly.
situation. So,
I mean, we want to solve this situation, but we have to solve it for all the employees, not just one. You know, so if it happens again, it works, and whether it's Manistee or wherever they come from, you know. So, and I think that's what we all want to get toward if we can do it, because we want to keep them if we can, the employee. Because I think you're right, it is hard to get inspectors.
I think that if we could get to the point where we have this in place, it would definitely be something that's going to help in the long term with recruitment too.
Right.
I mean, as HR said, we searched for somebody for 6 months, and we only found him after we started advertising in the Lansing area, Grand Rapids, further south. We didn't have any applicants on a local basis.
Right.
And it's not like we only did that. I actually snail mailed letters to anybody in my local area that had even the remotest credentials, which a lot of them appreciated just getting the heads up and knowing what they need. But,
Sure.
it's a lot of legwork to get somebody, and this was one of those things where you're so focused on the short goal that you didn't see the next hurdle being fully
Coming up.
staffing and what that would require.
I know,
Yeah.
and that's what it is a hurdle, and that's what we've got to figure out how to overcome that.
so I think where Amber's at is that we're going to explore, is there a way to make this specific just to the vehicles for building inspectors without opening the floodgates
Right.
or opening us up to,
I mean, that's the direction I'd like to go, that we don't include all the county, that we make it specific to inspections department. And you'd probably have to get that, go through corporate counsel, you know, make sure that it would be okay and stick. And just remember that if we do it for him, every inspector then could do the same thing.
Yes.
Not that they would, but they could.
Yeah, I'd say half the department would probably take advantage of that.
Yeah.
It would require some modifications within the department, but I already make some of those modifications on a case-by-case basis, so.
Yeah. All right. Does that settle that? Then we move on to number 4?
Yep, more homework for that one.
Can I just want to ask one question? Do you want a recommendation though from you guys that you want the executive tomorrow, your recommendation to push that agenda item to, you think you could get this done by regular session? Or do you want that it's not going to happen until August?
I don't-
It's on your agenda for tomorrow, but you could say to move it forward for discussion for the nighttime meeting, at regular.
Well, I think we could in case she comes up with something by that time and we know. Don't you think? I mean, I don't know.
In
It's
between
okay.
them, but I just want to make sure.
It's only a week though. But she's very diligent.
Do you
I'm
have,
happy to take a stab at it if you all would,
does that give you enough time, you think, or to at least come up with something, you think, or?
depending on what the administrator's schedule is and what kind of hoops you
Yeah.
have to jump through.
Well, I think we just leave it on there and
And
we
you
can,
guys, tomorrow you can move it forward.
we can either move it
Yeah.
forward or just say, no, we're not gonna do anything.
I just want to make sure I had something. Okay.
And I might get my answer from Grand Traverse about the exclusion. Is it exclusive to
Yeah.
their building safety?
And it might be that $1.50 is just only for certain things,
Sometimes, you read policies and whatnot, and they exclude emergency services vehicles.
Yeah, right.
You just don't know.
All right, so then we'll move to affordable housing permit fees.
Okay, so I put a lot of stuff in the packet for you.
Yeah.
On that. So, the first pages all the way through the summaries, those are all copies of building permits that we've issued in the last 5 years. So just some facts on that. Of the homes listed, there are 14 that are labeled as guest homes. 7 are detached garages with guest homes listed above, or apartments, et cetera, some kind of living space above. 1 is actually a shell-only home for a prefabricated. There were 11 of them issued in 2020, 20 in 21, 30 in 22, 16 in 23, 12 in 24, and 3 so far this year. In the spreadsheet side, 8 of the building permits listed there near the bottom, those numbers that I have listed there aren't full, I guess would be a good term there, because there's no trade permits full, or only a few of them are full. What I wanted to do with that spreadsheet is give you guys a kind of snapshot look at each of those as a project base, because this is when you suggested a possibility of doing $1,000 per project. So you can see what each of those total projects cost. Some of them had additional electrical permits, some of them had additional mechanical permits, some of them had additional plumbing. So the $1,000 a project doesn't include any additional permits, and at the bottom of the spreadsheet, I've given you a total cost, what those were, and what, if we were to go to this, what that would have looked like year to year for the loss there. So it can be done, but what I want you all to see is that we're really close to that $1,000 already.
Yeah.
So the smaller the home, the less your permit fee is going to be, because you're putting less payment. There aren't as many homes being built on a smaller scale, but the other downside to doing it this way is you can't figure if they're going to add anything, if there's going to be low voltage, if they're going to have a smoke detector system put in, if they're going to do a wood-burning fireplace or some other kind of fancier stove. So that does basically give them an entire permit or two for free if you do it this way. I also don't know how to properly divide that out per permit. as we talked last time, I still have to do the required inspections across the board. On the building side, it's gonna be at least $300. So if I allocate 300 to that, then I divide the remaining balance for my other permits, it's an oddball number that my system isn't gonna like. So, I just kind of threw some data on that, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about each one of these things, but I also have some data that you asked for, Mr. Yoder. That's near the end of the packet. I gave you guys a summary of Justice Way and those permits from the other permitting agencies. And I did reach out to the zoning administrators to see what the minimum house sizes are, but I didn't hear back from everybody because it's 4th of July. So Cleveland has 488 square feet. Elmwood Township is 720, but they also have a minimum width, 24 feet. Solon Township is 400, the Village of Empire is 720, and the Village of Northport is 408. So while I know they all have some number, they do vary.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anybody go this low either. And as you can see in the building permit copies I gave you, most of them are 8 the lowest, but we do have a couple of 7s. This also excluded a lot of what some people would say are the lower income ones. So I think there's only one pre-manufactured home in here. And I'm not talking about the shell only, I'm talking about folks like Pine Grove Homes in Traverse City or
Right.
the other ones. There's the minimum that people can afford and they need their minimum square footage is at least 1,000 square feet because most of those homes are 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So it's hard to cram that in anything less than 1,000 square feet. They do have them.
I know, I'm doing one right now. That's about 800 and some square feet, but the permit was minimal. You know, it would be well under $1,000.
And the plumbing fees vary too.
Yeah.
And you can see all that in the spreadsheet. I won't cover all that. That's just a bunch of numbers. But
Right.
as I said before, if you have a plumbing permit that's got 5 bathrooms, it's going to be more than a plumbing permit of 1.5.
Right. Well, what do you think about after seeing that information?
Yeah, I mean, I look at, like, on all those spreadsheets, you pretty much had a rough draft of what the approximate total cost of the house would be, and that's literally a drop in the bucket, you know, it's just, I just don't see, you know, because I started doing some math on there, and it's like, it's less than 1% on a lot of those, you know, where you're not, yeah, I mean, we could, you know, but at the same time, it's like Denver pulling out of your fund, that can in essence affect that, so I don't, yeah, I struggle with even going with that because it's like we're not gaining a lot of traction with that. But
And I did too with the summaries for Justice Way. You could see the grand total of what one of those homes cost with all of the permitting agencies. And that was just over $2,700. So everybody's permit is going to vary, but it's in the grand scheme of what it costs to build the home.
right, well, yeah, because you had some in there that were as low as $400, you know, but it was a small home that was just basic necessities, and that's very reasonable, you know, for permit fees, in my opinion, you know. And then you had some as high as, you know, like you said, 2,700. So yeah, I don't, you know, I don't know. Those are my opinions, I guess. I just don't know how it's going to affect that much, I guess. But
Well, I think you know, we want to send a message that we want to support affordable housing. But I think it creates more problems than it does benefits in doing it. For you, for the inspectors, for, you know, even maybe for the homeowners who want to add things on or do things on, and it just changes it all around. Because my thinking was it wouldn't include, any additions would have to be paid for if they decided to do a fireplace, or if they decided to, you know, add a garage onto it or whatever, that those would have to be, you know, fees for those. And so then that just creates problems because you're doing one to reduce it and then you have to add on, and they would not be happy with that, I'm sure. So I just don't think it does what I was hoping it would do, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't see in lowering the fees where we're going to benefit to the point where it's worth it. So,
well, it's kind of like I said last month too. I just, if we advocate for lowering it, then I think the township should too. And some of their fees, they're, you know, for 100 or more too, just to apply for something, you know. So, my personal opinion, it's a drop in the bucket, and it's like, yeah, like you said, I think it's a good gesture, but I just don't think the grand scheme of things is really gonna budge the needle at all, so.
When is the last time you raised your fees?
Well, before I was here, when I started, Will, you remember Linda in the office,
Yeah.
word of mouth, she said it was like in the 2000s. So I can tell you that I've brought this up in the last 3 years to just my counterparts in the area. On average, we are lower than the others. I'm not looking to raise them either at this point, but I think if we were to try to reduce this, it causes additional concerns within the department for how I do that. I can tell you that, for developers, we try to waive the planning fee. If you come in and you have one set of plans, it's the same, you're building 5 houses, then we're gonna charge you one planner fee. It's gonna take extra time for us, but we don't charge you planner fee on each one of those when it's the same house set. So there are certain areas where I try to give and take on these things too.
Because I think after 2008, I think it was about 2010 or 11, that that's when we set the fees to try to make sure we could get a fund balance. And I don't think they've been touched since then. So it's been, well over 10 years, which is unusual, and I think it's good. But hopefully we can keep that, and by saying that, we are, working towards affordable housing by trying to keep our fees the same and not raising them at a time of high inflation.
Well, and then just to add to that, if we put something, let's say we did advocate, and lowered some of this, how do we put in there where it creates more work for you to determine what is affordable and what is not? A developer could come and put lots on the lake that meet this criteria and then make a boatload of money, where it's nothing close to affordable, so that's gonna create more work for you to filter through that, and we can't just carte blanche, do that, so I think it's gonna create more issues than not, so.
So I don't see where we're actually going to do anything on that. Unfortunately, I don't see where we're going to can figure out something that'll work to make the fees less, because they're already as low as I think they can really be at this time. So any other comments on that, or is there any other discussion items that you want to talk about? Steve, Jim? No.
No, I'm good.
All right, then that brings us to public comment. Did you have anything to say, Alan?
No,
Yes.
Come to the table.
You got to come sit at the table, please, so we can hear you.
I don't have a limit, so I guess
So I talked forever.
I have to look at my board rules. I don't know what a committee.
It's 5
comment
minutes.
is. Five
It's
minutes.
supposed to be 5 minutes.
I've noted that quantity doesn't always help in public comment. Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed in that whole, how that all turned out. I think it says a message. What you do sends a message. What you don't do sends a message. And I guess I don't want to go all the way to the word compass, but I think that to sit around and say that $1,000 or $1,400 doesn't mean much, I think it still does mean much. I think it still does mean something to folks. I think it would be pretty simple. I know that devil's in the details, but you just set it up for new permits. You set up whatever, 800 square feet, 900 square feet, and say you come in and you're going to build a house in that range, then we're not going to charge you a fee. I never did hear what the total impact might be on the budget. I know, and I give you a lot of credit in the building department for creating and building this independent, or this, if you will, like an enterprise fund, so that you're safe if things do go to heck. But I think you could set it up for a 1-year trial period. You could evaluate it. then you could determine, hey, this thing was not worth it as far as participation and as far as what a pain in the butt it is for inspectors. I just don't think it would be a pain in the butt for inspectors, because I think you can establish right away if someone's coming in to build a home and it's a small home, they get put in there in that category that says, okay, we're not going to charge fees for that, for inspections of those small homes. I think that's pretty simple to do. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any board member comment? No? Yeah. Well, I just appreciate you working on this with us and listening to us and taking the time. I do appreciate it.
Very detailed.
Yeah, so then we are adjourned.